What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Prophecy Misfits Podcast. This is episode 410. War pigs. War pigs, yeah. Yeah. Some interesting things happening on the scale of warfare. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting discussion tonight. And I thought war pigs fit things perfectly because, you know, generals gather in their masses and that whole thing. And it's always the young ones fighting for the old and the Luciferian. That's how it goes. So plenty of things to discuss tonight around the war side of things. And not only when it comes to the actual military style of war, but there's other espionage war stuff that we'll be talking about tonight as well. But yeah, welcome in. This is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We get together and we watch the crazy things that are happening around the world right now. And I don't know about you guys, but it sure seems like we're kind of in the moments before another transition, kind of like how we were feeling it a few months back when it came to geopolitical shifting. It kind of feels like we're starting to see that again. And again, that's one of those things where it's an indicator of, you know, things progressing forward, but it's not an indicator of we can decipher the rapture. And that's also very important. And we keep that focus right now, especially 'tis the season for unbiblical high watch day settings and all that stuff anyways. But yeah, we'll be talking about that type of stuff, but glad to have you here. If you're new, this is what we do again on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and we watch the things God has called us to be watchmen, to pay attention of these things, which means we need to do our best not to be enticed to follow bias or narratives or anything like that Satan has very, very prominently put in front that most people are following right now. We need to try and question those things in order to do our job the best that we can, which is to get the truth out there, get the warning out there, and most importantly, share the gospel. So if you're new, welcome in. Glad to have you here. If you're a veteran, well, you know how it goes. So glad to have you here. But yeah, so we'll be talking about the war stuff. A lot of little things that we'll be getting to. We also, kind of like last Saturday, we have a little bit of depth when it comes to our wretched weather. Some interesting developments happening on that front as well, so we'll keep an eye on that and discuss that tonight. Also, if you guys missed it, there was the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which was basically just an opportunity for Trump to just destroy all of the media outlets, but he also announced his intention to run for a fourth presidential term. Yeah, he claims that he's won 3 and he's going to go for a fourth. Everybody's saying he was joking. Sure. We'll go with that excuse again. How many times has he just been joking and turned out to be, no, he wasn't. So we'll talk about that as well. We also got updates. The Houthis, we talked about how the Houthis were threatening to strike Saudi ships as they go through the Red Sea. And I said, you know, they like to throw stuff around. We need to wait and see. Well, we waited and saw, and indeed, we have escalation. Houthis struck a couple of tankers heading through the Red Sea. So the Red Sea is now basically shut off as well. Yeah, interesting. Saudi Arabia has returned fire against the Houthis, and this is where things get interesting. Iran says Ukrainians have attacked one of their vessels. Could we be seeing the beginnings of a merging of the Ukrainian theater with the Iranian theater? This is going to be interesting. Netanyahu is going to be making a trip over to Washington. We also got Trump imposing more tariffs after the last set that he put through were shut down by the SCOTUS. The January 6th slush fund, as well as the IRS protection from Trump and his family, has been eviscerated by a judge. So we'll talk about that as well. The Trump administration has admitted that they canceled grants to states, financial grants, federal financial grants to states that did not vote for him. Yeah, that's called unconstitutional political. That's a whole lot of things, but it's very unconstitutional. But yeah, he has withheld grants with that, and it's been admitted in court documents that they did that. We also got updates regarding the National Guard, who they just, the Pentagon spent $290 million to purchase 2,000 apartment buildings in Washington, D.C. to house National Guardsmen for 3 years, which means they go from their temporary housing and hotels to permanent housing. Very fascinating. The Pentagon has also removed 4 troop deaths from the Iran casualty list, trying to lower the number of casualties involved. That goes along with hiding casualties and injuries, which is we've been uncovering a crap load of information that says that's what's going on. We also got more medics, in just an increased amount of medics heading over into the Europe side, where there's hospitals where the Middle East troops get transported over for medical help. The Selective Service System, if you guys don't remember, this was voted on last year and it was approved and it's going into effect this December. There's going to be an automatic selective service system, so you don't have to manually, when you're 18 to, I can't remember the number, we'll get to it tonight. You have to manually register for selective service. If there's a draft, this will be automatically done now with a centralized AI filing system. And along with that, they want to implement software to run draft simulations to see how it will affect people in the country, as well as how to utilize all of that centralized information to pick the best soldiers for a draft. We also have the other side of things, the ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan. We've talked about him. He has officially been removed from his post. That's going to be an interesting dive. And it's fascinating because Israel is taking the credit for removing him, even though they are not a member of the ICC. And we just received threats from Marco Rubio that they were going to dismantle the ICC. Very fascinating. That's going to be an interesting one. So this is going to be an interesting one tonight. So strap in. Hope you guys are ready. Yeah, fun stuff. How y'all doing? Y'all have a good week? I hope y'all had a good week. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, hopefully y'all had a good week and everybody is resting up and getting ready for the next week ahead of us. Hi, Carol. Good to see you. Thank you. Glad to see you. It's been a week over here on my side of things, but anyways, all right, let's go ahead and get on with the show, shall we, and get into some housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
No, thank you. Sleeping.
Housekeeping?
All right, usual spiel. If you guys can like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. Not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. That is our whole goal. And again, as I said from the beginning, we're not trying to push a narrative. We're not trying to push a bias. We're not on anybody's side, on the political side, anything like that. We're sitting with Jesus, and we're trying to get that warning out to as many people as we can. We take the job of being a watchman, the call, the command that God has given us to be watchmen very seriously. And we try to use that to get out there for those seeking the truth, that want to know what's going on, and it gives us the opportunity to share Jesus with them. So if you guys can like, share, subscribe, I'd certainly appreciate it. We are definitely in the dog days of summer. There's always a dip of eyeballs and whatnot, keeping an eye on things during this time because everybody's busy doing this stuff. But of course, there's people that still need Jesus. So please do me a solid and like, share, subscribe. Certainly appreciate it. Also follow along on Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back up live streaming over on Rumble. Telegram post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format. I put on there as well. So yeah, if you have those platforms, feel free to follow along. If not, no worries. I just recommend that you bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date and everything that's happening in the Wretched Watchmen world of things. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams, the announcement page, the free book to download, and all the other jazz and shenanigans, I don't know, that you would want to know that's going on. So make sure you guys bookmark the website. And last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, anything like that. We don't do memberships, subscriptions, paywalls. We don't sell anything. We don't do any of that type of stuff. Everything is 100% free, and it's free, and we're able to do this consistently week in and week out is because of your guys' donations. So if you would like to help out, if the Lord placed a new part in your heart, those links are below, and it helps keep everything running. So thank you guys. And of course, gets the gospel out, the most important thing. So thank you for those who donate and pray and encourage and everything like that. You guys are awesome. So appreciate you guys. All right. Yeah, Amanda, like I said, we're kind of in the dog days of summer. Everybody's doing stuff and everything, so seems to be consistent around July and August. There's a lot of regulars missing from the group, so hopefully we'll get them back. All right, yeah, it is Saturday, and we got some things to talk about when it comes to natural events and whatnot, so let's go ahead and get into the Wretched Weather Report.
Everybody got their fancy hats? Let's go!
All right, so the Wretched Weather Report, what we do is we keep track of the trends of what's going on when it comes to weather things. It'd kind of be weird if we were talking about something else with the Wretched Weather Report. But yeah, we talk about what's going on when it comes to weather, natural events, things like this. As we know, these things are going to increase in size and frequency as we get closer and into the day of the Lord. They're part of the birth pangs. And it's important that we pay attention to these. They tend to get overlooked. I would say they tend to get overlooked, and those who do pay attention, not all, but for the most part, tend to kind of sensationalize things. We don't want to do that. We don't want to ignore them, but we don't want to sensationalize them. It's important that we do keep track of them because they are mentioned in Scripture. So we just do that. I'm not a geologist or a proctologist or a podiatrist or any of those things. Might be Barbara Walters. You never know. But yeah, we just keep track of what's going on because it's important, as the Lord says it's important. But yeah, we just keep track of the trends, and it allows us to also give us an avenue to pray. It allows us to be informed of what's going on, to pray for those around the world affected by crazy weather stuff and the tragedies that tend to follow with them. Yeah, so this past week when it comes to earthquakes, 5.5 magnitude and up, we're kind of coming down. We had about a month and a half of either a lot of them or there was a lot of big ones. We still have a pretty good amount, but the size has come down a little bit for this week. So we got a 5.5 in Ischos, Peru, a 5.5 in Puerto Madero, Mexico, a 5.5 in the Pacific Antarctic Ridge, a 5.6 in Port Alice, Canada. Curious. I know we got some Canadians in here. Did you guys feel that one? We got a 5.6 in Northern Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a 5.6 in the Kermadec Islands, New Zealand region. We got a 5.8 in Ternate, Indonesia, 5.7 in Taumaruni, one of the Kiwis, correct me on that one, New Zealand. And then the big one of the week was a 6.0 in Sola, Vanuatu, which is kind of average for Vanuatu. They're always shaking, always got the big ones. So not necessarily noteworthy. And then a 5.7 in Puerto Williams, Chile. So that's what we got when it comes to earthquakes this past week. As far as volcanoes, we got 48 total eruptions happening around the world right now, which is +1 from last week. We're sitting at the top of our usual global average. We haven't gone over 48 in a long time. So I'm curious to see if we're going to jump over that. Possibly this coming week. We got 7 in North America, which is +1 from last week, 7 in South America, 2 in Europe, 2 in Antarctica, 3 in Africa, 17 in Asia, which is down 1, and 10 in Oceania, which is +1 from last week. And it's been a while since we've hit double digits on Oceania volcanoes. So that's actually pretty interesting. Been a minute on that. So now, like I said, we have some depth when it comes to what's going on with natural events that I think we should keep an eye on. And that includes a very rare 5.0 magnitude earthquake in Texas next to this is North Texas next to the Oklahoma border, and it was felt across the Texas-Oklahoma border as well. This is very rare. Now, earthquakes in Texas aren't rare. and Texas has felt some 5.0s and stuff before as well. But this area is actually very different. They get smaller earthquakes. You're talking like 2 and maybe 2.5 magnitudes over there, but there's a 5 up there. And as you guys know, there's been an interesting influx of earthquakes happening in the northern American side of things, specifically around faults. The San Andreas fault line, the Garlic fault line, and the New Madrid fault line. And so this is very, very interesting. And it says residents across part of Texas and Oklahoma were shaken up after a rare 5.0 magnitude earthquake struck in the southern plains, sending tremors across the region unaccustomed to seismic activity of this scale. While minor quakes are occasionally registered in the region, often linked to industrial wastewater disposal and fault line activity, a magnitude 5.0 event is significantly less common. And my understanding from what I was hearing is the people up in Texas, they said they definitely felt that. Even though it was a pretty shallow quake, they said they definitely felt it. So this is significant because this goes along the lines of, as I was saying, a bunch of other quakes that have really garnered attention, especially the large ones, as well as the one that struck right at the junction point of the Garlic and San Andreas fault line. And so what I've been gathering, because I've been looking at this and seeing what's going on, what I've been gathering is there's a possible North America energy buildup happening underneath the feet of us, and this is possibly leading up to something big. So in the past month, this is rare, in the past month, we had the 2 major quakes in Venezuela, those massive quakes that hit Venezuela. And while that's technically South America, it's right on the edge of that North America alignment. I can't think of what it's actually called because, again, I'm not a geologist, but there's a certain alignment and it sits right on there. Then we just had the 7.3 in Mexico. Then there was the 6.0 in Baja, the 6.1 that was just north of Cuba in the Gulf of Mexico. 5.6 in California. That was the one on the that region, or no, that was the northern one. And then there's the 4.0 that hit in the junction point, and then a 5.5 not too long ago, just off the coast of Oregon. And from my understanding, energy buildups like this, and this is what I've been gathering from those who have been watching this, energy buildups like this may. So again, not saying that it's gonna happen, but it may indicate a large electrostatic field forming in North America underneath our feet. And that could create a massive event. And it's one of those things where I don't think, you guys know where I'm going when it comes to the massive event. I'm sure we all are understand where that's going. We've talked about it when it comes to San Andreas and Madrid and Yellowstone and that whole conversation there. Again, I don't think that's going to happen until possibly the moment of the rapture, as we know usually when recorded in the Bible, when it comes to biblical history, those who are raised from the dead, it creates an earthquake. And if the rapture is going to happen, there's going to be people rising from the dead all around the world, which is going to shake the entire world, which may cause this whole thing to go. So we might be seeing an energy buildup in preparation for that event when that happens, or maybe not. We don't know. I'm not going to sit here and proclaim anything. First of all, I'm not an expert in this area of things. And second of all, even the experts have no idea what's going to happen with this. But it is worth paying attention to. Again, being a watchman has to do with the main position of being a watchman is to not be caught off guard. Your job is to watch for things, to pay attention to little indicators so you're not caught off guard, so you can sound the alarm and let people know. And so this is one of those things where it's worth keeping an eye on, because we don't want to be caught off guard. And if this thing starts building up, if we start seeing some more quakes in this North America region, specifically on faults or large scale, or even like the Texas one, which was a mild for most places, but a very rare large one for the area that it was, we might continue to see a large electrostatic field continue to build in that case. So pretty important. we don't normally talk so much about stuff like this, like when it comes to earthquakes and everything, but this is definitely something that I think is worth keeping an eye on. Then that leads us over to this. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but France and Spain are battling massive wildfires as more than 250,000 people are forced to flee their homes. And it says France sent a hulking military cargo plane. France had to call in the military for this thing. It's getting so bad. France sent a hulking military cargo plane to dump tons of flame retardants as it battled raging fires on Saturday and slashed the final stage of the Tour de France to deploy security personnel to the blazes that forced tens of thousands of people to flee their homes. The latest wildfires in southern Europe this week have displaced more than 250,000 people, including some 70,000 people who were evacuated in central Spain. One man has died in Menzies. I don't know how all that pronunciation works over there. The municipality reported on its Facebook page the first death so far in the blazes. With how bad these fires are, and there's only one death, that is quite a miracle. I have to say, that's just wow. So that's good to hear. It says, with winds expected to shift in a west to east direction on Saturday afternoon, potentially driving flames closer to Bordeaux, fire crews and authorities were digging trenches, using retardants, and taking other blaze-blocking steps. He said, the French Interior Minister, he said that the fire was about 20 miles west of the city and lost some of its intensity overnight. The government has mobilized soldiers to join the fire crews as well. So this is a massive, massive fight with nature happening over there. So pray for them. Pray for those dealing with this, because, again, as we know, fires do a lot of damage, and people's entire lives get uprooted, taken away from them because of fires and stuff like this. And it's bad. I know in some places they said they're starting to get a foothold on it, but they said for the most part it's pretty much still out of control right now, especially with all the winds causing problems. So please be praying for those both in France and Spain, and pray for the firefighters and the soldiers that are currently trying to battle this thing. I know there's other countries. Might be worth taking a note, United States, when it comes to the Canadian fires. But I know there's other European countries sending their firefighters over to help with this as well. Again, kind of like what Canada and Mexico has done to help us fight our fires, but yet we can't return the favor to them. It's amazing how that works. So yeah, we have that going on. So please pray for those dealing with that. All right. That is the Wretched Weather Report for this week. Like I said, some interesting developments happening, worth keeping an eye on, as well as praying for. So, good stuff. Let's see here. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on and get into the news stuff. Now that we covered that as well. And we're going to start here. We have to start here. We just have to. So if you guys don't know, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Trump announces intention to run for a fourth presidential term. I won 3 times. Now I'm going to do it again despite constitutional ban. And yes, he did indeed pull out a Trump 2028 hat to do so, which again, I've made mention that the gift shop at the White House currently sells Trump 2028 merchandise. You can buy that hat at the gift shop. Yeah. Kill the music. Is there music playing? There shouldn't be. Unless that's something else. Anyway. But as you guys know, he's made reference to this multiple times. He's stated this multiple times. We know that they've been working and looking at things when it comes to this, even though the Constitution says otherwise. There's the rule that was implemented after FDR. Don't hear any music. Okay. Yeah, I think it was just an expression. I don't think there's okay. But yes, Donald Trump told a ballroom of journalists at the White House Correspondents Association dinner on Friday night that he intends to run for a fourth term in the White House, pulling a red Trump 2028 hat onto his head to make the announcement roughly an hour into the speech. He says, I'm pleased to announce my intention to, and this is somewhat of a scoop, my intention to run for a fourth term as president of the United States. Trump told the crowd at the Waldorf Astoria in Washington, I will be doing that. I will be having an official I won 3 times. Now I'm going to do it again. There's his wonderful, terrible third grade English to go along with it. It says Trump continued the riff by leaning into his record of election wins while brushing aside the question of legality. It should be easy. I'm getting very good at running for president, he said, before adding, did very well the second time, by the way. It's a rigged election, but we don't have to talk about that because you don't want to talk about that because you know that your best friend Xi, you don't want to throw him under the bus because you made a big deal. You rallied and campaigned about it for years after years after years. You pushed that narrative. You got people to support you because of that whole thing, which we know was a theatrical rigging of the election, which is actually a selection. And now that you put out these quote unquote unclassified documents, and just a few days later when somebody asked you what you were going to do in response to China and their quote unquote election rigging, you said, we'll talk to them about it, but for the most part, we're just going to leave it alone. Just covered that on the Friday's Wretched Recap if you're interested. Trump basically is like, oh yeah, all the years of campaigning and rallying about this stolen election, I'm just going to leave it alone now. As he invites Xi to join him in Washington. Interesting. But yeah, this is being put out there, of course, as, he's just joking. That's just Trump. He just jokes. Throwing out the jokes, and that's usually how people that pump for Trump and the MAGAs and the propaganda pastors and all that type of stuff, they continue. Oh, he's just trolling. He's just joking. And so fascinating how the years of saying that he's just joking, they continue to do exactly what they said they're going to do when it comes to bringing down this country, burning the Constitution, and doing everything illegally. But yet you ignore all of that because he's just joking. So we'll see what happens with this. Another one of those things that's also fascinating is J.D. Vance and his family. They're moving out of Washington, D.C. He's the vice president, but yet he's wanting to move out of Washington, D.C. That's fascinating. Some interesting moves happening all about the same time that they're fortifying DC and the White House and giving permanent housing to the National Guardsmen there, and they got the election stuff going on for the midterms, and it's just a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces right now. I can't even begin to tell you any speculative anything on it because there's so many moving parts, but we just got to do our best to keep an eye on as many parts as we can. So again, we're not caught off guard. That is the most important thing. Moving on, we get into the war pigs side of things, and this is fascinating. Talking about a lot of moving pieces. There's definitely been some interesting movement happening where, as I said at the beginning, we might be seeing a combining of the Russia-Ukraine situation in the Middle East. Might. But there's some interesting moving pieces on this. So it goes on to say, the Houthis are striking ships carrying Saudi oil in the Red Sea. Tankers are seeking other routes. Some tankers are sailing to Asia through the Suez Canal. A lot of people are saying, yeah, just go through the Suez Canal. No big deal. Who cares? Well, it takes an extra 30 days to get around it. That's how important that Red Sea crossing is. And again, this is just another one of those aspects that just goes to show that this is just theater. I mean, you got the whole ordeal with the Strait of Hormuz, and now we're past 90 days, over 90 days, with all this stuff happening, that now they're shutting down the Red Sea, making everything so much worse than it already was. And this is another one of those things where I think it has to do with timing, because the Houthis have been shouting threats this whole time, and well, it looks like they got the call and said, all right, shut it down, and that appears to be what's happening. So some tankers are avoiding the Red Sea and will sail to Asia through the Suez Canal after the Houthis began striking ships carrying Saudi oil in the waterway. Reuters cited the example of a Danish flag tanker carrying oil products called Torm Innovation. A spokesperson told the outlet that given the security situation in the southern part of the Red Sea, the vessel is sailing via the Suez and around the Cape to Asia. The outlet added that diverting through the Suez Canal adds around 30 days of journey to destinations if ships can't go through the Bab el-Mandeb, that's the Red Sea spot there, straight. The closure of the waterway by the Houthis could exacerbate potential shortages with the Strait of Hormuz, also closed due to increased clashes between the U.S. and Iran. Don't know if you guys have paid attention, but gas prices spiked again. It spiked again. I know it went up over here, down here in Texas, but I do know that the average gas price for the United States. Sorry, I don't have the average gas price for like Europe and stuff like that. And so, sorry, those who aren't in the United States. But it went back up over $4 again. And now with the shutdown of the Red Sea, we might continue to see it go up. Or if they don't want it to go up that much, they'll just do their usual stock market manipulation and gas market manipulation and continue to do what they've been doing the whole time. Because as we know, we don't live in reality. It's all independent theatrics, and they move things at will according to what they need to do. But yeah, this is definitely going to be one of those situations where we could definitely see another spike when it comes to oil prices. CNBC noted that Saudi Arabia has been diverting millions of barrels of oil per day from the Strait of Hormuz to the Red Sea as a result of the war. The Houthis preventing Riyadh from doing so further exacerbates the disruption taking place in the oil markets. And again, as we covered, I think it was the last podcast. If it wasn't the last one, it was the show before that. The numbers don't make sense. We went over that. What they're saying when it comes to stockpiles, European jet fuel and diesel doesn't make any sense because they should have ran out of that stuff weeks ago, and they haven't. It just continues to carry on. We also have the situation here in the United States where all of a sudden our stockpile, they keep withdrawing from it, but yet the numbers just don't seem to be going down in any way. So again, we got rigged numbers happening. We can't believe any of that stuff when it comes to what our oil stockpile is, and that's even for the Europeans over there. I don't have numbers for Canada and stuff like that, but the numbers that they're telling us don't make any sense. It's like the job market numbers. It's cooked books. I think we're seeing the same thing with that. So again, this is one of those things where we can't necessarily know what's all happening, but it's a situation where we know something is happening and we just need to be aware of it. Sometimes that's the only position that we can be in, is to just sit here and go, we know something is going on. We don't know what, we don't know the repercussions of it, but we know there's something happening. And so we just need to keep an eye on the situation as a whole and make sure we don't jump to conclusions or start putting out bad information and stuff like that, and just continue to keep an eye on the whole thing as it goes. This is obviously an escalation. Where it will go from here, pretty sure only God knows that one. So hang on to that. So that leads to this. Saudi Arabia then strikes Houthis after Iran-backed rebels target energy sites. So Houthis didn't just target ships, the tankers, but they went after sites like actual energy plants as well. So Saudi Arabia has launched a fresh wave of strikes against the Houthis in Yemen after the Iranian-backed rebels targeted Saudi energy infrastructure. The Houthis claim to have attacked Saudi state oil companies Aramco's facilities in Yazan and Yanbu on the Red Sea coast on Saturday using ballistic missiles and drones. The Saudi-led coalition in Yemen had earlier struck Houthi targets in the Houdeida region, acknowledging that it had carried out airstrikes for the first time since the warring parties agreed to a truce 4 years ago. Hours after those strikes, Saudi civil defense forces warned that Yazan, which hosts a large refinery, and Yanbu, which is home to key export terminal, were under threat, urging the public to seek shelter. Greek security officials, now we got Greeks getting involved, Greek security officials said the air defense systems in Saudi Arabia intercepted 2 ballistic missiles launched from Yemen towards Yanbu on Saturday, while a Greek-operated U.S.-made Patriot missile battery shot down a drone from Yemen as well. So yeah, now you're getting the Greeks involved when it comes to defensive measures now, which is very fascinating to watch because we know Turkey, while they're connected to NATO, which puts them on the side of the United States. Yeah, big parentheses on that one. Big quotation marks on that one. We know that they're technically connected to Iran, and we know that Turkey has had problems with Greece as well. And now that Greece is defending Saudi Arabia from a group that's backed by Iran, that might start stirring some stuff with Turkey. And that's what I'm talking about, is how connected it is over there. These little things like this can start stacking up and start really shifting the direction of things and possibly start escalating. So this is definitely something to focus on. Again, I can't stress this enough. We need to keep close watch of Turkey. They are so important. They are the spearhead for the Ezekiel 38 situation. And it's just, we need to make sure that we focus on what is happening, even when it comes to these little things. Having an idea, you don't need to be an expert on it, but having an idea of who's connected to who is pretty important, especially when Greece is protecting Saudi Arabia from a group backed by Iran, which is friends with Turkey. So fascinating situation to watch on that one. And that leads us Turkey, Greece. Yeah. Ew. Turkey, Greece, nasty. Hold on one second. We are not going with that. I put him on 10 minutes. Keep an eye on him. Tools. Thank you. All right. We're not going there tonight, man. We're not going there tonight. Not happening. So that leads us into this next situation, which again, you want to talk about possible escalation and combining one theater to another theater. We have Iran says Ukrainian attack on vessel in Caspian Sea killed one of their sailors. Thank you, guys. It says Iran's foreign minister condemned on Saturday Ukrainian attack on an Iranian commercial vessel in the Caspian Sea, saying it resulted in an explosion that killed one sailor and injured another. Throughout the war in Ukraine, Kiev has had to counter Iranian-designed drones deployed by Moscow. Kiev has offered its drone interception expertise in countries in the Middle East that have suffered strikes from Iran. Tehran described the attack on its vessel as an act of aggression and said it would defend its national interests and securities, while accusing Kiev of seeking to expand the war in Ukraine. The Iranian denunciation coincided with comments by Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky that Kiev had noted Russia was passing on its satellite observations in the Middle East to Iran to enable it to direct strikes in the region. So, before we go any further, we got a situation where now Iran is proclaiming that Ukraine struck a vessel and killed one of their people. And so that's obviously a problem. We know that there's already been media tension. I'm just going to say media tension between Ukraine and Iran because of the information that appears to be going back and forth. We know that Moscow created a certain drone, passed it over to Iran, which increased its capabilities and added some features and then sent it back. So we got that whole situation happening. And so you add in the attack on a tanker, killing one of them, and then you add in the fact that we know that Iran utilizes satellite imagery from various sources, including China and Russia. That's why the whole excuse that the United States shut down their quote-unquote own satellite stuff that we, the public, can use in order to make sure that Iran isn't hacking into it and getting that satellite imagery. was a load of baloney that had everything to do with information blackout for us here in the Western world, because they didn't want us to see what was actually going on over there. And now Zelensky is saying we have proof that Iran and China are actively helping, or Russia and China is actively helping Iran target these things. And so that's adding to the media theatrics of everything, which might be pulling these things closer. It's a possibility that the plan with all of this is to combine those events, which is one of the reasons why the whole Russia-Ukraine thing was drawn out. That's definitely a possibility. I'm not saying that's why or that's the reason, but we got to think of the possibilities of that. And one of the things that we've been looking at and questioning this whole time is, obviously that war that's happening is not real. There is absolutely no way that Ukraine would be lasting this long after we continue to get report after report, year after year, that they're so diminished and they're so out of this, and they're scrambling to try and get soldiers to the front line because they don't have this and they don't have that. And we know that if it was legitimate, Russia would have taken care of that in a weekend. But obviously there's many plans, a lot of different factors. You can think of probably 10 off the top of your head of how they've been using that event to move things when it comes to money laundering, weaponry, geopolitical events, policy stuff, moving information assets around. I mean, there's countless things. And now we might possibly be seeing a joining of these things, which is interesting, because then you would technically be joining Russia with Iran on that, which is a part of that whole axis that they have when it comes to the narrative side of things. So this is fascinating. So we definitely should be looking at this. It says Iran, we just went over that. Okay, it says Zelensky had earlier said that Ukraine's forces struck a Russian warship and vessels used for transporting Iranian-linked military cargo in the Caspian Sea. The Ukrainian president, in subsequent remarks posted on Twitter, saying Kiev had recorded since the beginning of July active Russian satellite surveillance of the Gulf states and the U.S. military facilities located there. These images subsequently appear in Iran. This whole thing doesn't make sense, because the narrative is Ukraine discovered the Russian satellite imagery, and the images are somehow getting sent to Iran for them to hit. But yet the United States didn't know, according to Zelensky, that this was going on. But yet somehow Ukraine has the ability to not only hack into Russian satellites, but also hack into a Russia-Iran backdoor channel information network and gather all of this and say, hey, we're going to give it to the United States. None of that makes sense. Again, this is another instance where the narrative doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. It doesn't work. People will believe it and continue to go along with it because it's the narrative. It must be true because that's what they've been telling us for years. But again, it doesn't make any sense. And then on top of that, you have Carolyn Levitt, who was asked a question about this, and she publicly said that we don't care. The Trump administration does not care that Russia is helping Iran. Why don't they care? Because half of the Trump administration are Russian assets, including Trump himself. So again, this is just a thing where the narrative does not make a lick of sense. Now, we don't necessarily know the outcome of what all this is going to come up to be, but we can pretty much sit here and go, this narrative doesn't fit. They're preparing for something else, whatever that might be. But again, this is pretty important, in my opinion, to keep an eye on. And that leads us to this. This is always important whenever these two evil people get together. This is coming from N12 News, which is Israeli. It says, next week on Tuesday, a meeting is planned between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump in Washington. Netanyahu will present Trump with intelligence material that shows how Iran is racing back to nuclear weapons and accelerating its operations. So here we go again with the Iran nuke narrative. That whole fake news propaganda narrative of things, which Netanyahu has been pushing for 40 years. they've been a year away, a month away, and 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon since the 80s. And it was none other than Netanyahu himself that introduced that back then. Crazy. 80s. Interesting. It's about the same time that Russia brought in Trump to become an asset. almost as if all of this was planned. It's amazing how that works, right? Very fascinating on that. So this is also another indicator that if Netanyahu is coming in and they're going to be pushing this Iranian weapon, which is fascinating because about the same time that this is being reported, United States intelligence has also come out and put out a report. They also put out a report saying that the new Ayatollah Khamenei is even more inclined to race for a nuclear weapon more than his father was. As soon as I saw that little disclosure of information from the U.S. intelligence agency, I sat there and go, wow, you guys are scraping the bottom of the barrel for propaganda, aren't you? Because that is clear. I mean, that's like a big red stamp on it that says, this is fake. Don't believe this. Because that is one of the dumbest things. Not quite as dumb as the 100-page report from the State Department that says Cuba is responsible for 7 decades of communist revolution in the entire Western Hemisphere. Not quite that stupid, but still pretty stupid indeed. Man, it's crazy. It's crazy. Amanda, more war, yes. Yeah. Again, I think they're prepping. I think they're prepping for the whole kit and caboodle to go up in flames so they can bring in a new system. It's going to be the perfect opportunity to get rid of the fiat financial system as well. Just Patrick hyper cringe. Yeah. Ain't that the truth? All right. So that's what we got when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East as far as possibly increasing and escalating the situation. All right. Moving it countryside here. Yeah, we're back to this same old song and dance. They continue to beat that poor dead horse. That horse, man, has been dead for a long time, but they just continue to beat it as Trump to impose quote unquote forced labor duties on Friday as temporary 10% U.S. tariffs expire. So Trump is imposing more tariffs on almost every country that imports stuff into the United States. And that just took place on Friday, yesterday. So yeah, the tariffs are back on, which means your prices go back up. Yes. Says the Trump administration on Friday imposed new tariffs of 10% and 12.5% on goods from 60 trading partners, including the European Union, over allegations of lax enforcement of forced labor bans, just as a temporary 10% global tariff expires. So the tariffs that just expired are the ones that the Supreme Court shot down, and now Trump is bringing in another set of tariffs to go on top of it. And it's under the way of, we're going to put tariffs on you because of forced labor. Make it make sense. The move is the White House's latest effort to restore President Trump's campaign vision of a near global tariff after the U.S. Supreme Court in February struck down his reciprocal duties of 10% to 50% imposed last year. Hey, at least that island which houses nothing but penguins, at least they got their tariffs relieved. So those poor penguins have been suffering because of the tariffs, and now they can get back to life as normal for them. Save the penguins. Penguins' lives matter. Yep. The new tariffs announced on Thursday in a Federal Register notice will cover 99.4% of U.S. tariffs, but include numerous products exemptions, such as oil and gas, fertilizer, and certain food items. Imposed under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, the new duties allow the administration to maintain a tariff floor on virtually all U.S. imports despite the Supreme Court setback. The tariffs are also likely to face less legal risk than those struck down in February, as Section 301 has survived prior court challenges. And this is a part of, if you guys remember that, we covered the whole tariff thing for a long time But one of the things that Trump came out and said is we don't care what the Supreme Court orders when it comes to the tariffs because we've got many other ways to impose more tariffs anyways. And this is what they were talking about. So again, this is a case of, well, we're just going to do whatever we're going to do. We don't care. The law means nothing to us. The Constitution means nothing to us. The Supreme Court and the checks and balances and everything doesn't mean anything to us. We're just going to continue to move things forward according to what our Luciferian puppeteers have been telling us that we need to do, and whatever way that we can financially benefit our own pockets and hurt the American people as much as possible. That's just the matter of fact, Jack. And this is another situation where we suffer because remember, tariffs are taxes on us. The tariffs are technically put on other countries, but the only people that pay, the only people that get hurt are us. The stores that import the stuff increase their prices based upon the tariffs and pass that cost on to us. So again, the store doesn't lose out. The other country that exports their goods to us don't lose out. The United States government doesn't lose out. We lose out because we're the ones that have to pay everything accordingly. America first, right? That's what I continue to get told. America first. So, yeah, imagine that. We do have something positive, though, until this turns into something negative again, which is just how it goes. But you got to celebrate a victory every once in a while. And this was back on July 13th. I've been putting this off, and it's like, I got to talk about it. Federal judge nullifies Trump's entire January 6th slush fund. He also referred his attorney to possible professional discipline, possibly being disbarred. You know that's not going to happen. But if you guys remember, there's a period of time where Trump sued Trump's government for the tax disclosure stuff. And then Trump settled with Trump's U.S. government outside of the court to create or to take $1.8 billion of taxpayer money to hand to all of his friends that dealt with lawsuits during the January 6th situation, and had his attorney general, who was also his personal attorney outside of the presidential office, to create a one-page letter barring the IRS from going after him or any of his family members for taxes. You guys remember that? Well, a judge, praise the Lord for this judge, bless her heart, said, blocked the slush fund, and basically made that IRS protection null and void as well. And if anybody wants to sit here and say, oh, you just made up all of that stuff, no, go and look for yourself if you actually want to know the truth, because the information's there. You can find it all. Official court documents, the whole thing, whole kit and caboodle, if you want to know the truth. Or you'll say, no, I'm not going to go look. I don't need to, because you're just making it up. It's like, okay, then you don't care about the truth. Federal judge nixed the settlement underlying Donald Trump's nearly $1.8 billion slush fund. The fund was a result of the unprecedented deal that Trump made with himself after he dropped his $10 billion lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service for the unlawful leak of his tax returns in 2019. The honeypot payments were pitched as reparations paid for by U.S. taxpayers to the Department of Justice to virtually any right-winger that felt targeted by the previous presidential administration. We even showed official letters from certain people who were submitting it to the Department of Justice in order to get millions of taxpayer dollars to add to their billions, because they're all politicians and celebrities who claim that they were hurt by the January 6th lawsuits that they received. Yeah, that's right. The billionaires wanted to steal dollars from you because they had their fifis hurt that they were perpetuating a false narrative. Williams ruled, Williams is the judge, Kathleen Williams, ruled that any entities affiliated with the slush fund settlement, including the president, the Treasury Department, and the IRS, were prohibited from using the details of the arrangement in any official capacity. She also referred Trump attorneys Alejandro Brito to the Florida bar for possible professional discipline. Ban that person in Rumble, please. We're not putting up with that. It goes on to say she noted that while Trump had the right to pursue legal action over the unauthorized publication of his tax returns, he chose not to do so while he was still a private citizen. Instead, Trump did not bring the charges until he had returned to the White House and subsequently appointed his former lawyer, Todd Blanche, atop the Justice Department. These officials then negotiated on behalf of the United States with his current lawyers, including his former White House counsel, to reach a settlement. Williams assessed it is risible to suggest that there was never adverseness between the party. What is going on? There we go. Man, the spammers. Jeez. Gosh. Anyways, man, crazy. Let's that be it for tonight, shall we? The spammers, man, crazy. All right. So it goes on to say the settlement between Trump and his government also included a curious addendum for Blanche that immunized Trump. Wow, I can't say anything. From further federal prosecution, the government of the United States, Blanche wrote, would be forever barred and precluded from pursuing any and all claims against Trump and his family or his business. It says, but as Williams observed, the jaw-dropping components of the case were such as billions of dollars in taxpayer funds proposed for undefined grievances or the blanket immunities offered to Trump, were not put before the court. So basically, to sum this up, she says, in sum, the facts before this court demonstrate that there was never adverseness between the parties, which means Trump can't sue his own government where those attorneys for his own government are going to benefit his lawsuit. This is like, seriously, this is like if you take yourself and you go, I'm going to sue myself. I'm going to take this to court. I'm going to take myself to court and I'm going to hire two lawyers, one to represent me and one to represent me. And you're going to go to the court and you're going to say, I'm suing myself and I want to make a settlement where I'm going to take $1.8 billion from the government and hand it to myself. That's what he was doing. So she's saying there's no adverseness. He's literally suing himself with his own attorneys that he has on his payroll. And it says there was never a case. This wasn't even a case because you can't do that. And there was never any controversy because there's no actual separate parties between the two. And then she goes on to say, and there was never a question as to who would prevail because it was a set up scheme to steal taxpayer money, Americans' money, and give it to his friends. America first, right? That's what I continue to get told on it. And then on top of that, she pointed out that the settlement was never made known to the court. They made this settlement outside of the court authority, which you can't do. If you have a case within a court system, even if you settle, you don't take it to an actual, trial. Even if you settle, it has to be done under the jurisdiction of the court because it's part of a court case and it must be. They settled this and started moving forward with it without even putting it in a court filing. And she says, this is just, you can't do this at all. This is completely illegal, unconstitutional. There's no case outside the bounds of jurisdiction. You can't do any of this. Everything about this was completely fraudulent. This is fraud. What Trump was doing was committing fraud against the American taxpayer. That's what he was doing. But America first. My word, the spammers on Rumble. Yeesh. It's probably one dude that has like 500 accounts and he just keeps coming in spamming stuff. Crazy. Neardo Andrew can't touch this. Great, that's gonna be stuck in my head all day long. Oh man. Yeah. Not of this world. You having fun yet? All right, grab some water, everybody. Or a juice box. Either one. Carl, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. It still blows my mind. I literally just saw a video posted today from a pastor still claiming that Trump is America first. And it's just like, wow, man. It's mind blowing. It's truly mind blowing. Oh, we got another finger on the trigger over on Rumble. Finger on the trigger. Okay. Let's continue on with illegal, unconstitutional corruptness when it comes to the government, shall we? Trump administration admits canceling grants to states that did not vote for him. This is as illegal as it gets. This is threatening. This is threatening and actually moving forward with said threat to hurt states for not politically aligning with the president. And this is exactly what we told was going to happen when it came to the policies and whatnot that were being dropped, including NSPM 7. My word, man. Might just have to shut the Rumble chat down. He keeps going with that. So it says federal officials said in court documents that they halted billions of dollars in funding for energy projects to states based solely on whether they backed Trump in the 2024 election. And guess who was leading that? One of the shadow handlers behind the scenes, Russell Vogue, however you pronounce his last name, Vote, whatever. He's the Heritage Foundation guy that was one of the main writers behind Project 2025. He's one of the shadow guys behind all this. You got Russell, you got Steven Feinberg over in the Pentagon. He's a part of this. You got Peter Thiel, obviously, who's a part of this, and that's the Epstein network connection and the technology connection over there. And then you have Curtis Yarvin with the Dark Enlightenment, and these are the shadow guys who are controlling Trump. Again, I cannot stress enough: Trump is a puppet. He's not in control of anything. He's not even in control of his bladder anymore. That's quite obvious. And these are the guys doing it. And this is one of the things. And even the Heritage Foundation Project 2025, they have in there, they don't blatantly say it, but they put in there that they're going to get viciously aggressive and take down any political opponents in any way, shape, or form utilizing the government, financial grants and stuff included, in order to move the agenda forward. And that's exactly what is going on with this. Now, it's worth noting there's some fascinating statistics. I had no idea about it until I looked into it before we even get into this, because I think it's important to keep this in mind as we go forward. We know that in past administrations, there's been forms of this that have happened. Nothing on this scale. This is definitely something much larger than we've seen before, but we've seen in past administrations that they have done this, where certain states have had funding and whatnot lifted. The Biden administration did it. The Obama administration did it. The Bush administration did it. Clinton administration did it. Almost every administration has done some form of this. So it's a case of where they're not all off the hook. This isn't the first time this ever been done, but it is the first time on this scale it's been done. With that in mind, I found out, and this just goes to prove that it's all one uniparty. That's why it's just so fascinating to watch this. During the Biden administration, most of the projects that were granted by the federal government, the grants issued for the projects, went to red states. That's right. The Biden administration gave more federal grants for Department of Energy contracts to red states because they knew that when Trump came in, he would defund the blue state projects. So they served it up. They led the way. They opened the door for this, knowing ahead of time what was going to happen. And it's so fast because all it does is show that they're all working in conjunction. We talked about the same thing when it came to the AI stuff. I can't remember specifically what it was, but a couple of policies that Biden signed just days before exiting the White House opened the window for Trump to come in and start issuing his AI advancement policies. And it was just a case of here's proof that they actually worked together to move everything forward. And that's just another one of those indicators that is very, very fascinating when it comes to it. Also, another statistic that I thought was very fascinating. Do you guys know who the number one contributor is when it comes to taxes from state taxes going to the federal government to fund social programs? I had no idea about this, but it's fascinating. And people are going to hear me say this and they're going to think that I'm a leftist, and you guys know that I'm not. The blue states surpass when it comes to tax revenue for social programs for the federal government the red states by miles. Actually, the majority of red states take more social grants than they actually send back. The blue states are actually they actually send more in than what they actually take. I've been taught my entire life that it was the other way around. But I looked at the financial statements, and again, they're official numbers, so take it with a grain of salt. But I looked at the financial statements of this stuff, and the red states take significantly more than they actually contribute, and the blue states contribute more than they take. Very fascinating, because I've been told it was the other way around all my life. It's so interesting when you actually start looking into this stuff, what you find out. So, oh man, Rumble's a party over there. All right, so let's go with this here. Let's take a look. It says, when the Trump administration canceled more than $7.5 billion in Biden-era federal grants for clean energy products in October, it framed the move as an urgent corrective to protect taxpayer funds from waste. But it wasn't true. In a little-noticed court documents, which, for those who think this is fake news, go and look at the court documents. You can find the court documents straight from the courthouse listener, and it's official documents from the U.S. government attorney's office. They admit this. Federal officials acknowledged this month that they had terminated the funding based solely on political criteria targeting projects in states that were represented by Democrats and had voted for Kamala Harris, the party's presidential nominee in the 2024 election. Crazy. So if the state wasn't voting for Trump, they canceled billions in grants. The admission showed how President Trump has weaponized the provision of federal education, energy, health, housing, and infrastructure aid in his second term. And again, as I said before, This is something that all administrations have done. They've taken money away from certain political reasons, but it's usually done state by state. It's not done sweeping. That's why this is actually pretty significant, because this was a sweeping motion of any state that did not vote for Trump. The admission showed how President Trump has weaponized the provision of federal education, energy, health, housing, and infrastructure in his second term, far from rooting out the sort of misspending, that Mr. Trump sees as rife in Washington. The White House has instead sought to leverage the budget as a tool to assist its allies, or as a cudgel to hurt the president's foes. The saga illustrates the stakes as the Trump administration is completing a set of rules that would provide the president even greater control over more than $1 trillion in annual federal grants. The administration's latest concession about the grants came in a lawsuit filed by a group of California researchers challenging various federal agencies that have canceled Biden-era funding. Keep in mind, this was set up ahead of time during the Biden administration, where the projects where they wanted to keep the money going, which Trump has been told to keep going, went to the red states so they can move forward with this display that we currently see right now. Again, don't lose track of that. Don't fall into the left-right situation. They're all on the same team. They're all moving forward. They all pass each other the ball to keep it rolling in the direction that the Luciferians want. Don't lose track of that. After reviewing its spending, the Energy Department last fall created a list that recommended canceling more than 600 grants awarded by the Biden administration for a wide range of novel energy projects. That list included funding for projects in states represented by both Republicans and Democrats. But in October, the White House Budget Office, led by Russell T. Vought, that's Project 2025 Heritage Foundation Shadow Controller, terminated only 284 of those grants. Months later, in court filings, federal officials indicated that there was little else that had informed the final decision about which grants to cancel. With one exception, a lawyer from the Energy Department conceded in a court filing this month. The 284 terminated grants had a recipient location and or at least one place of performance in a state that awarded its electoral votes to Kamala Harris in the 2024 election and has two Democratic caucusing senators. Crazy. What is going on? Hold on. I pressed something that I wasn't supposed to. Are we good? Okay. Pressed something I wasn't supposed to press. My bad. It says the lawyer acknowledged that none of the grants were included in the October terminations based on any programmatic, statutory, cost reduction, or performance-based factor. It was entirely political. In contrast, the administration left untouched hundreds of additional energy grants in states that were represented by Republicans and had backed Trump in the last election, even though the Energy Department had recommended canceling them. The government confirmed in the July court filing. So even the Department of Energy says we need to cancel these things. And the Trump administration, specifically Vogue, said, no, we're just going to cancel the ones in the blue states. As a result, the administration's actions halted funding for hundreds of energy projects, including upgrades to electrical grids in states like California and Oregon, which we know they have failing infrastructure, but then we know that the federal money that goes to those states anyways doesn't actually go to fixing the infrastructure. So, yeah, again, this is just ridiculous all the way around. We know that. Efforts to reduce methane leaks from oil and gas operations in Colorado. Again, they don't do what they're supposed to do either. And large hubs to produce clean burning hydrogen fuels in California and the Pacific Northwest. Some awardees later sued the Trump administration in an effort to restore their grants. Again, this is just another one of those situations where even doing the right thing still isn't doing the right thing because they're all terrible. That's what's so frustrating about this is even though we know that canceling federal grants, which is a system that's set up, whether you agree with it or not, we're not even going to get into that conversation, to go to these states to fix these things, we know that even if that money still went to those states, it still wasn't going to fix what it was supposed to be used for. It's just, again, this is what happens when we live in a corrupt and lawless world, guys. This is what it is. when there's even the right thing is still not the right thing. That's welcome to lawless corruption. That's what it is. It says federal officials offered the new details about the grant cancellations as part of an agreement with plaintiffs meant to spare the government an exhaustive. This is key. I want to put a big emphasis on this. Federal officials offered the new details about the grant cancellations as part of an agreement with plaintiffs meant to spare the government an exhaustive evidence uncovering process, discovery. The court filings said that process could have required federal agencies to hand over more damaging records. And this is one of those key things whenever you see lawsuits getting taken to court and then they settle outside of it, most of the time it has to do with the fact of not going to discovery. Because if it goes to discovery, that means all the little hidden secrets come out, which is why you never see that happen, at least here in the United States, because they don't want those secrets getting out. Very fascinating. So they did this because, well, we want to protect all the dirty little secrets. The agreement applied to other federal agencies targeted by the lawsuit, including the Department of Transportation and the Department of Health and Human Services. Yep, they're in on it too. Some agencies later revealed new details about ways in which they reviewed their grants, using specific keywords tied to Trump's political priorities and past directives for possible cancellations, according to additional court documents this month. The filings also appeared to undermine the congressional testimony. Testify under oath, otherwise you'll be held with perjury. But we know that none of that ever happens for these people. The filings also appeared to undermine the congressional testimony of Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who spoke about the cancellations in a June House hearing. He said no decisions were made on politics, even though they just put in there that it had everything to do with that. But again, doesn't matter. Because even if you lie in court under oath, nothing ever happens to you unless you're not a part of the club. That's just how it goes. So again, this whole situation is just, I can't even, everything about it just shows the lawless corruption of what is happening in this country right now. Again, this is why we don't believe the narrative. This is why we don't push the political lies. This is why we don't pick a team. We don't wave a flag. We don't have a letter, a little letter next to our names. That's why we don't go along with these things, because the moment that we do, we know that Satan then has a hook in our mind to continue to pull us in any direction that he wants to, based solely on the fact that we have picked a team color or team name, when they are both under the same club, being puppeteered by the same Luciferians, and they are there simply to manipulate, to push the agenda forward, and to make as much money that they can stuff into their pockets that Satan will allow them to along the way. That's why it's so important that we don't get caught up in this. And we know, because when we look at this stuff, again, this was a case of the prior administration, the Biden administration, got the call on this, and they were soft tossing the ball. They were moving it forward so they can continue to move the agenda forward. As we see here, we saw it with the AI stuff. We saw it with the financial stuff. We continue to see it all the way around because they work for the same team. They work for the same team. I shake my head so much whenever I see people commenting on this stuff that continue to go to bat for one side or the other. You see something like we just went over, and they're like, see, this is why Trump and the Republicans are bad. This is why we need to continue to support the Democrats. And you see Biden didn't do stuff like this. And it's like, how can you not see this? How are you still batting for a team? I see the same thing whenever there's something that comes out that Obama or Biden did. And it's like, you got the Trump people come, see what happened? It's because they're the Democrats and they're the bad people. You don't see the Republicans doing stuff like that. It's like, yes, you do. You just don't see it because you have specifically told yourself to ignore it, because you are dedicated to a team. Don't be dedicated to a team. Kneel at the foot of a king. don't pick a political team. It's really not that difficult. And it's just, and especially hard to see Christians doing the same thing, where I see it all over the place, man. You go there because they've been trained. Something like, well, those demon rats, they're the bad people. That's why we need to continue to support the, not the rhinos, the true Republicans and Trump and everything like that. I'm just sitting there going, you have been so brainwashed. But you will be the first person to claim that you know what is going on. And it's shocking. Yeah, Lori, it's spiritual blindness. It's like zombies. Exactly. That's Satan is so good at it, man. Because Satan sets up levels of deception. He puts out the obvious stuff. And then he puts out a next layer, and then a next layer, and a next layer. And he does it for individual parties. It's not just like there's one book of deception with different pages. There's 5,000 different books for 5,000 different parties that all have their own versions of deception. And so he can just pull out the playbook for whatever that person, whatever party they're a part of, and just play that one. That's why there's a certain level of deception when it comes to the right wing. That's why there's a certain book when it comes to of deception to the left wing. That's why there's a deceptive book when it comes to the secular world, and a deception book when it comes to the Christian world, and a deception book when it comes to the Muslim world and to the Jewish world and all these things. And there's so many different ways of it. It's just, you have to remember that Satan has had thousands of years to plot, to plan, to study, to do these things, to perfect what we are currently seeing right now. And we know it's going to get to the point where it's all going to build up towards the one big, great man of deception that comes in. And unfortunately, the very same ones who claim that they're aware of the deception, the ones that shout, Democrat, Democrat, Democrat in the church, are the very same ones that, well, some of them might still be here to fall for that great one, because they were unfortunately taught by people who gave them false hope and a false gospel. Whether it's hyper grace or whether it's works based, doesn't really matter. Or some of them in the case of, well, you have to vote a certain way, otherwise Jesus will reject you. And we got to be very careful that we not only don't fall for that, but we also don't support it. We speak out and warn against it. That's another aspect that we need to make sure that we continue to hold on to with all of this. It's one thing to not fall under it, but we need voices out there in the believer sphere warning against such people. That's very, very important. Oh, man. Frog in my throat. Old soot foot. Wow. Oh, I like that. I haven't heard that. Soot foot. That was great. That was great. Yeah, and that's a good way to look at it. Not necessarily something that many people think about, but yeah, Satan knows he doesn't have much time because of how successful he's been. The more successful he gets, the less time he realizes he has. Very, very interesting perspective. Very true. But yeah, not necessarily a perspective that a lot of people view it from. Gold star for Bab Bab. That's a good one. Extra juice boxes for Bab Bab. That's great. That's a good perspective. I like that. All right. Let's keep it going. Oh boy. So we've been keeping an eye on what's going on in the DC area, because it sure seems like they are fortifying it and locking it down possibly for something in November. A lot of things seem to be trending, building up for something in November, especially since we know Israel has their elections in October, and then we have the midterms in November, and a lot of things seem to be building up, including fortifying the White House, building, increasing fences around the White House, permanent fences, adding in a helicopter pad, the ballroom bunker, just a whole bunch of other stuff, and then the National Guard, which has been extended for at least 3 years. We know that they will be walking the streets, military walking the streets in DC. And now on top of that, we have the National Guard will spend $290 million on apartments for Washington troops. Wow. Yeah, that's not good. Thousands of National Guardsmen mobilized to Washington, D.C. will soon be living in apartment units under a $290 million rental contract the Guards called a long-term housing solution. National Guard Bureau officials announced Friday it had signed a $292 million contract with corporate lodging company Placemaker to provide 2,000 apartment-style units for Guardsmen mobilized in Washington, D.C. So, I want you guys to think about, and the term is, the contract is 3 years. Do the math. Just in your head, pull out your calculator. Everybody's got a phone next to them. Pull out your calculator. Think about this. 2,000 apartments for 3 years for $292 million. Do you know how much per apartment per month that is? It's insane. I haven't looked, but I'm curious who runs and owns Placemaker. I'm very curious. I want to know who that is. I haven't looked yet. I'll see if I can find anything on that. That's an insane amount per month for apartments for National Guardsmen. In August of 2025, Trump announced that the mobilization of 800 local National Guardsmen to Washington, D.C. to bolster local law enforcement. That number has slowly crept up over the last year as Republican governors have added more troops from their states to the mission. As of Monday, 4,755 National Guardsmen from 15 states were assigned to the Guards Joint Task Force District of Columbia. And again, they will be there for at least 3 years. And they're not even doing anything except walking around guarding the reflective pool that Trump's failed pool boy messed up when they redid it. It still hasn't been fixed. There's still paint flapping in the wind. They're standing there guarding that, picking up trash and doing things. And they're just, yeah, it's absolutely absurd what's going on. I think it might be preparation for something coming up. Adding on to the whole military situation, we have Pentagon blames troop deaths disappearing from sight on data disruption. So if you guys don't know, the Pentagon went and removed 4 names of 4 troops who were killed in the Iran war, and stated that it was a data problem, when in actuality it was Trump trying to decrease the casualty count to make himself look good by stating they died during the ceasefire, not actually the war. Because as you guys know, Trump is declaring this situation that happened post-ceasefire as a entirely separate war in itself, which it's not. It says the number of U.S. service members killed during the war in Iran has lowered from 18 to 14, which 18 I don't think that's a true number. I think it's higher than 18 because I think that they're hiding other stuff. And we've gotten a whole bunch of stuff coming out saying that they're hiding injuries, they're hiding casualties, they're not telling us the truth. Even the U.S. military soldiers themselves are coming out and saying they're hiding this information. It says during the war in Iran was lowered from 18 to 14 on Thursday, with the Department of Defense's acting press secretary Joel Valdez saying that the change was due to temporary data disruptions. However, 3 military officials gave a different explanation for the change. The Trump administration decided to remove 4 service members killed between July 17th and 19th, only 3 of whom have been publicly identified, because their deaths occurred after Trump declared a ceasefire in April. So basically, well, it was during a ceasefire, and so we want the numbers to look good, so we're going to make it so they can't be listed during the Iran war. So 18 soldiers haven't been killed during the Iran war, only 14. That's what they're attempting to do. They're altering the numbers. The administration of transparency is altering the numbers, disrespecting the troops. Disrespecting the troops. And it's fascinating because one of the family members, one of the mothers of the troops that have been removed from the listing, still has not been given any detail about what happened to her son who was killed in Iran. She's only been notified that he's been killed. No details given to her. She's angry about that. Because they're hiding information. The soldier was probably somewhere, deployed somewhere where they weren't supposed to be. And so they're trying to cover their tracks with all of this. And of course, Chief Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell criticized the reporting, calling it fake news. Yes, because we can believe anything that comes out of this administration. Oh, if you guys don't know, the White House posted a TikTok video when they were transferring the bodies, as they usually do, making sure that they spent as much time, you can see them moving the camera, as much time with Trump's face in the middle of this, which it's supposed to be respect for the fallen soldiers, not the president, and made sure to put a note stamped on the video saying that Trump was in attendance, showing his respect, because it's all about him. Even during the transferring of the dead soldiers' bodies, they made it all about Trump. Not only are the troops dying for a purpose that is completely false, they have no business being there, no reason to be involved with this because it has to do with Luciferian agenda, but then the disrespect that they receive afterwards. Wow. Goes on to say the total death toll of the Iran war among U.S. troops was lowered only a day. Keep in mind with this as well. Lowered only a day after Trump was accused of minimizing the deaths. Trump compared the conflict's death toll with that of past wars, such as Vietnam and Afghanistan, appearing to boast about the relatively small number. I should have got a screenshot of it because of how ridiculous it was, but Trump posted on his Truth Social thing, listing out wars of past presidents with their death counts, and then posting Iran at the end with 14. He was praising himself, saying, see, even when I do get us into a war, I'm not getting our soldiers killed as badly as those other presidents. He literally posted that. Then the next day, they lowered the count, the casualty count. On Wednesday, Trump, which is fascinating that he was comparing wars because he came out and specifically said the Iran war wasn't a war, but yet he was comparing it to war. On Wednesday, Trump also faced backlash after describing the war in Iran as a skirmish. See? According to the independent research publication Military Spend, the estimated casualty count, civilian and military, across all parties involved in the Iran war ranges from basically 9,000 to 18,000 people, which who knows at all what the actual numbers are. I do know that there was, about 160 girls, young girls in a school that was bombed by the United States. They were killed, so we do know that. Oh, man. It's just, it's insane that people still fall for this. It just is. The disrespect, just the getting people killed for Luciferian reasons, then throwing disrespect on it, lying about things, covering things up, making it all about the most narcissistic man to ever walk the face of the earth. It's just, and Christians support it. It's mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing. Then we have this. More troops, more medics, and more weapons. Trump boosts up U.S. military buildup in Middle East as Iran war deepens. The United States is sending additional troops, medical personnel, and military equipment to the Middle East as Trump considers expanding military operations against Iran. The latest deployment includes special operations forces, fighter aircraft, and bomber units, while additional medical teams have also been positioned in Europe as Washington increases its military readiness amid the ongoing conflict. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal, special operations forces have been deployed from the U.S. base in the Middle East over the past week. They've been there, so it's just like whatever. Fighter jet squadrons have also been positioned across the region, while bomber aircraft based in the United States and the United Kingdom have been placed on high alert for potential operations. That stuff's just kind of whatever, but this is the part that's pretty fascinating. It says more than 150 medics have also arrived at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. That's the major hospital for U.S. military over in that region. So anything that happens in the Middle East, they ship them over to Germany to Landstuhl. There's a second one, but Landstuhl is the main one over there. The primary treatment facility for U.S. troops wounded in combat operations in the Middle East. Now, I did some looking on this because I wanted to make sure I got it right. So Landstuhl, the German hospital over there, they do a consistent rotation. So they're always sending medics over and bringing them back. It's just a consistent rotation. And so I wanted to look and say, okay, they're sending 150. Is this a part of their regular rotation that they're doing? No. First of all, the rotations are never more than, I think it was like 60. They're always, it's somewhere from 50 to 70 average of the rotation of medical personnel that's constantly in rotation there. So 150 surpasses that. This is also not in conjunction with a transfer. This is an additional 150. So they're sending an extra 150 over there, which is pretty fascinating because apparently, according to what the Pentagon is saying, that, oh, there's no injuries, there's no casualties, there's no worries about all of that. And again, if you guys remember a couple months ago, we went over some information coming out where they were putting up signs at Landstuhl saying, prepare for mass casualty events. They also shut down the labor ward. If you guys remember, all of the pregnant mothers that are over there with the military system, because sometimes the entire families go over there, they shut down the entire labor unit indefinitely in order to open it up for increased U.S. military personnel to come in and receive treatment because of the war going on in the Middle East. Now they're sending an extra 150 medics over there. I don't have any more information than that. All I can do is tell you what I found out and give it to you and leave it at that. Is this because of bad things that have been happening over there? Or is this in preparation for escalation? I don't know. But either way, sending an additional 150 medics over there, along with all the other stuff that's already happened at Landstuhl a few months ago, it's not normal. We'll just say that. It's not normal. Which leads us to this. For the mothers and fathers watching who have young adult children, you might want to pay attention to this one. Selective Service System wants to war game the draft. So, first things first, we know in last year's NDAA they signed had a section that had to do from switching from manual selective service registration to automatic selective service registration, which means it's an AI system with a centralized database of information regarding all kids who are turning 18. You don't even need to register anymore because the AI system will gather your file, medical history, work history, all your history that they have in their centralized database. Thanks, Palantir. And as soon as the day the kid turns 18, boom, automatically signs them up. That goes into effect December 19th of this year. That goes into effect. Now they want to add a simulation program to run simulations on who would be selected for a draft, where they would be taken from in the United States and added to it, and how to properly maneuver these things. They want to run a simulation based upon profiles that will automatically sign up 18-year-olds for selective service. This is the perfect opportunity to hand select individuals, whoever they choose to do on this. And it says, fearing that new plans for the U.S. military draft pool won't work, the Selective Service System wants to create a computer simulation to test scenarios for its national mobilization. The readiness simulation project comes as the U.S. government is about to change its draft registration system. Since 1940, men within a designated age range have been required to register with the Selective Service, but under a proposed rule, men 18 to 26 will be automatically registered starting December 19th, 2026, this year. The Selective Service System will work off data contained in other federal databases. Very interesting that this is also happening in conjunction with possible combination of the Russia-Ukraine situation with the Iran situation. At the same time that they're fortifying the White House and doing the whole election thing, election manipulation stuff for the midterms, in combination with an NDAA Section 219 that will integrate the U.S. military to Israel, granting the ability and easy access flow of U.S. military personnel information to be accessed by the Israeli military and can be used according to whatever stuff that they need. Boy, oh boy, this is not going in a very good direction for those who do not have their hope in Jesus. If you are a parent listening right now and you have a young child, age 17, 25, and you don't have your hands you don't have your soul in the hands of Jesus, boy, oh boy, I would be working overtime to make sure that you and your family are saved, because things are cooking in a direction that ain't good. I can tell you that much. This ain't good. It says the Selective Service System currently relies on manual analysis, legacy modeling approaches, and outdated assumptions and historical data sets that do not fully reflect modern demographics, communications channels, throughput constraints, or operational readiness conditions, warned the agency. The deadline for vendors to propose the simulation models is August 14th. The computer simulation will explore multiple areas. These include evaluating staffing and resource requirements, comparing mobilization and police scenarios, and assessing the operational impact of surge conditions. In addition, the system will identify throughput risks, delays, bottlenecks, and support executive planning and reporting obligations. Scenarios will encompass draft, registration, selection, notification, delivery, and classification. They will also cover the alternative service program, which includes various forms of community service as well as conscientious objectors. A draft registration system based on data compiled by and accessed from other federal agencies is likely to raise privacy concerns. But guess who was the main leader? Guess who was the main leader that came in under the disguise of taking out the debt, that came in and updated all of the federal systems to be connected to a singular system. Doge was the program that set this all up to connect all the federal systems together to a Palantir centralized database. But it was Doge that established all of that. Yes, the very same Doge that was praised for cutting the gut. Cutting that glut. And did you guys know that the deficit has increased since Doge got involved? The deficit has increased $5 trillion. Imagine that. So not only did it not cut the glut, but it actually helped establish the system that's going to draft all these kids. Get a little bit more information on this. We head over here. It says, while the U.S. military is all volunteer, the Selective Service System still maintains registration lists of males between ages 18 to 25 years old, and a second special skills database based on professional licensing lists of workers in certain healthcare occupations. The Selective Service System is an independent agency charged with running a draft or drafts in the event that are needed to fill personnel gaps. The list of requirements for the software that they're looking for must model the full end-to-end mobilization pipeline, support configurable scenarios, provide decision support analytics for leaders, planners, and operators, operates within the Selective Service System designated cloud environment, use anonymized aggregate data, and support complete government ownership and sustainment. Independent agency, but yet the program that they must use or the program that they're going to use must be completely owned by the government. Interesting. Selective Service System is embarking on this search for software ahead of December 18th, when the requirement for male U.S. residents aged 18 to 25 years old to register themselves in the system will be replaced with the requirement for SSS, Selective Service System, to automatically register them by relying on other federal databases. Oh man, it's as if the Trump administration came in with all the technocrats in order to establish this very system. Oh, that's right. They were. Seemed to be warned. I remember there's a very, very, very small amount of people warning about that before the 2024 election. Interesting. So yeah, if you are a parent of these kids, now I don't necessarily think that this is going to happen. Like the actual draft type of stuff is going to happen while we're here. I could be wrong. This is just my perspective. I don't think that's going to happen while we're here. However, if you are a parent of a kid in that age range and you don't have Christ, what on earth are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? It's time to get you. Hello, fathers. It's time to get you and your family to Jesus. Stop waiting. Stop putting it off. Don't sit there and go, oh, it'll be fine. What are you doing? What are you doing? All right. Water break. All right. On to the last bit that we have for tonight. This is pretty significant, though, and definitely something that we should be aware of for several reasons, honestly. And it has to do with going over the update regarding the International Criminal Court. Now, we just talked about this not too long ago. When Rubio came out and said that the United States was going to begin dismantling the International Criminal Court. And it seems that they're doing just that. And I think this is, like I said, important to keep an eye on from several reasons. Some when it comes to just your basic geopolitical, and one that might be quite biblical. And so we definitely need to take a look at this and know the situation surrounding it. We just got word that the ICC, International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan, was removed from his post over sexual misconduct allegations. This is fascinating. I'm going to do my best to try and make this as simple and clear as possible because this can get really messy trying to explain it. I'm just going to try and make it as simple as possible without overcomplicating it. So first things first, let's find out what's going on with this. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court was removed from office on Friday, nearly 2 years after sexual misconduct allegations against him first emerged. This is the first thing that we need to make sure that we understand before we go any further, because it was reported, this was March of this year, after a year-long investigation and 3 quote-unquote independent ICC judges viewed it, he was cleared of all charges of these things. They said that the evidence that was provided proved that this was false. Now, before I go any further, I don't know the details of all this stuff. I don't know if there really was something going on. All these people involved in these positions and stuff like that are sexual predator creeps, and so who knows? However, I also do know that intelligence communities often use prostitute honeypots for situations just like this. And so this could certainly be a honeypot in order to corrupt this dude, contain blackmail, and kick him out if they needed to. So, or it could be both. It could be both. So it's important that we understand that I don't know the details of this. Maybe there was something going on. Maybe there really wasn't. Or it could be an intelligence operation with utilizing a honeypot. And that goes back a long time. They've been doing that. However, it is important to realize that back in, again, this was March, that the judges cleared ICC's Karim Khan over sexual misconduct claims. The panel appointed by War Crimes Court governing body says the UN probe has not established any misconduct or breach of duty by the chief prosecutor. Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, has been cleared of all wrongdoing by a panel of judges appointed to review the findings of a United Nations investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against him. A highly confidential report by the panel of the 3 judges was submitted to the ICC's executive oversight body, the Bureau of Assembly of States Parties, the ASP, on March 9th. It will not be made publicly available and has not been seen by the majority of the court's 125 member states. Since December, the judges who were appointed by the ASP have been examining an external fact-finding report conducted by the UN Office of Internal Oversight Services, the OIOS, into the allegations against Khan, which have unfolded in parallel with his office efforts to pursue war crimes investigation against Israeli officials over the war in Gaza. That is significant to keep in mind, because keep in mind, he was the dude that put out the first ever warrants for the arresting of Netanyahu and Gallant from Israel for what they did in Gaza. Keep that in mind. Goes on to say the panel is unanimously of the opinion that the factual findings of the OIOS do not establish misconduct or breach of duty under the relevant framework. The panel's report concluded according to the sources. So he was cleared. This was a 2-year-long investigation. And then, 4 or 5 months of 3 judges going over the investigation and said, no, cleared. But now, magically, just a couple weeks after Rubio said we're going to dismantle the ICC because they are going after Netanyahu, all of a sudden, these member states voted to oust the guy who issued the warrants against them. That's a chin scratcher. Convenient. Coinky dink. I don't believe in those things. The ouster of Karim Khan comes at the time when the court is already facing daunting challenges, including a campaign by the United States to dismantle the ICC, which was established to prosecute people responsible for humanity's worst crimes. Keep in mind, neither the United States nor Israel are members of the ICC, even though we know it was the United States who helped establish the ICC, did not become a member, but wanted to weaponize it and made sure that it couldn't be weaponized against them. We went over the history of that a couple of shows ago. By a large majority, the ICC's 125 member states voted to remove Khan, a British barrister of serious misconduct and serious breach of duty. The court's oversight body, the Assembly of States Parties, said in a statement, even though they cleared him of all those things. The 56-year-old Khan was accused of sexual misconduct with a female aide, as outlined by the AP in a series of stories, allegations he had steadfastly denied. According to the document seen by the AP, Khan engaged in a sexual relationship with the woman and tried to prevent her from pursuing her allegations. Most media companies aren't putting this out. Most media organizations are putting this out, but I looked into who. They're trying to hide her and hide her name, but I looked into her, and this is the second high-ranking official at the ICC that she has accused of this. Now, again, we know that these people are all creeps. So maybe it's legit, maybe it's not, but it is fascinating that she individually put out 2 against people in the ICC, which is, again, fascinating. Again, I'm not saying one way or the other on this. I'm just giving you the information that I found. The oversight body will now need to hold elections for a new prosecutor, someone who is likely to face sanctions by the Trump administration or a puppet to be installed, which has already brought the force of financial penalties and travel bans on 13 members of staff, including Khan. Keep in mind, and we went over all this information already, that there's already been a whole bunch of sanctions put out against several people in the ICC, including Khan, by the United States. That was led by Tom Cotton, Senator, I think it's Arkansas. He put that forward. He led the charge. That was back in 2024. And then we also know that 12 U.S. senators put out a threat letter. They signed a threat letter to Khan saying, don't you dare go after Netanyahu and Gallant, because if you go after them, we will go after you. And it was people like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and people like that. And we also know Lindsey Graham was the one that told Khan that, basically they created the ICC in order to weaponize it against African and black countries. Rest in peace, Graham. Khan's removal was determined by a process in which he was never given a fair opportunity to be heard, and in defiance of the conclusions of the independent judges who examined the full evidential record, the attorney said. In a statement last week, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the U.S. was launching a sweeping campaign to dismantle the threat posed by the International Criminal Court to U.S. sovereignty. Again, the timing of this. I can't be the only one sitting here going, this is very convenient timing. Right? I can't be the only one here. Goes on to say, Rubio said he will pressure member states to withdraw from the institution, which Venezuela already did because they controlled Delcy Rodriguez. Fascinating. And sanction organizations that work with the court and ban staff from traveling to the United States. Mafia leverage. Even though he's been cleared, vote this guy out or we'll break your kneecaps. Bada bing, bada boom. Simple as that. Countries that enjoy the benefits of the United States security umbrella will be called upon to reject the court's jurisdiction over U.S. citizens. This is how it works, people. This is how it works. Hours after Friday's vote, Venezuela announced it would withdraw from the court. Venezuela considers that the court's actions reflect a demonstrated geographical bias, which has disproportionately concentrated its work on African and Latin American countries to the detriment of the global South. Felix Plasencia, the country's foreign affairs minister, announced in a statement, only confirming what Lindsey Graham has confirmed. Earlier this year, prosecutors at the court announced that they were dropping an investigation into whether U.S. sanctions against Venezuela qualified as crimes against humanity. citing a lack of evidence. A separate investigation into possible crimes committed by Venezuelan security forces under former Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro will continue. Fascinating. So the ICC is going to drop all investigation into what the United States did, which not only broke United States law, was not only unconstitutional, but also broke international law, and they murdered a whole bunch of people on boats, saying that they were carrying drugs, but provided zero evidence to do. But the ICC is going to all of a sudden drop that, but yet continue to pursue cases against Nicolas Maduro, was illegally kidnapped and probably living it up on some beach resort with Epstein and all the other people that have outgrown their use to this whole charade. It says Trump's administration already has brought sanctions against Khan and a dozen other ICC staff in retaliation for warrants the court has issued for top Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Netanyahu, over the war in Gaza and investigations into U.S. personnel in Afghanistan, which have already been dropped. They were dropped years ago. Khan's removal will have no immediate impact on the arrest warrants in 2024 for Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for crimes against humanity, which can only be withdrawn by ICC judges. So again, there's still a whole transition period because those warrants are still active, even though Khan has been removed. So that's what we've got so far. So Khan, who's the one who issued the arrest warrants for Israel, even though he was threatened by both Israel and the United States and sanctioned not to do so, was released of all charges by a woman that may or may not have been involved with this whole situation, either in an intelligence form or was a real thing. Again, we don't necessarily know. All of a sudden, he was cleared of that. And now, after a week after Marco Rubio said we're going to dismantle the ICC, he's kicked out after member states were threatened by the United States. We following? So are we tracking? Are we tracking so far? Here's where it gets interesting. Oh, yeah, it's not even interesting yet. Because after this was done, Israel, who's not even a member of the ICC, has come out and taken credit for Khan's ousting. So coming out from Guy Azrael, who is a I-24 diplomatic correspondent, so he's Israel News. He came out and said, against the backdrop of the dismissal of International Criminal Court Prosecutor Karim Khan, a senior Israeli official tells me that Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar played an active role in efforts to advance the move. Keep in mind, they have no jurisdiction, no involvement. They're not a member of the ICC, but yet somehow they ousted him? It's fascinating because there is a whole bunch of Christians that will call me anti-Semitic for pointing this out. Imagine that. According to the official, Sa'ar oversaw a dedicated task force and employed intensive diplomatic efforts aimed at securing Khan's removal from office. Let's hear from Sa'ar himself, shall we? Gideon Sa'ar, Minister of Foreign Affairs for the State of Israel, one of Netanyahu's right-hand men. He put this out and said the long-delayed removal of Karim Khan from the ICC for serious misconduct has exposed the moral bankruptcy of a corrupt prosecutor who rushed to file scandalous arrest warrants against Israel's prime minister and former defense minister in an attempt to reflect from the serious misconduct he feared would be revealed. These were politicized and outrageous arrest warrants against elected leaders of a democracy with an independent legal system. Anytime I hear democracy and independent legal system, I just laugh. I don't care if it's Israel. I don't care if it's the United States. I don't care if it's Russia or China. I just laugh. Defending its citizens against terror. These warrants issued against a country that is not even a member of the ICC. They even admit that they're not a member, but yet he's taking credit for doing this. Should never have been sought in the first place and should be revoked immediately. Oh, man. Oh, man. But this is where it gets thicker. This is where it gets interesting because this is not new. This is not something that just occurred in the past couple of years. Oh, no. This has been an 11-year-long campaign by Israel against the ICC. This is from May of 2024. Spying, hacking, and intimidation. Israel's 9-year war. So 9 years from 2024. Add 2. That's 11 years. On the ICC exposed. This has been a long situation, guys. When the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court announced he was seeking arrest warrants against Israeli and Hamas leaders, he issued a cryptic warning. I insist that all attempts to impede, intimidate, or improperly influence the officials of this court must cease immediately. Israel has run an almost decade-long secret war against the court. The country deployed its intelligence agencies to surveil, hack, pressure, smear, and allegedly threaten senior ICC staff in an effort to derail the court's inquiries. This is why I mentioned the possibility that the woman who brought these allegations forward may indeed be an intelligence honeypot. There's records going back decades that the Mossad, the CIA, the KGB, I mean, that's what they do, is they take these women and they go and they flaunt them in front of men to go and do things with them, to get information, to get blackmail, to utilize them in some way, shape, or form. It's been notorious. We just talked about a month or two ago about one of the KGB honeypots that was working working over here in the United States with members of the Trump administration, the NRA, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is just what they do. So that's why I'm talking about this is a possibility. It says Israeli intelligence captured the communications of numerous ICC officials, including Khan and his predecessor as prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda. This goes back before Khan, intercepting phone calls, messages, emails, and documents. The surveillance was ongoing in recent months, providing Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu with advanced knowledge of the prosecutor's intentions. A recent intercepted communication suggested that Khan wanted to issue arrest warrants against Israelis, but was under tremendous pressure from the United States. And we talked about some of that, the threats by Lindsey Graham, the threats by the British, I can't remember his name, but there's a British dude that was threatening him as well. We also know that there was the threatening letter that was signed and sent to him saying, you know, if you go after Israel, we will come after you type of thing. I mean, there's a lot of proof that shows that this is really what's been going on. Bensouda, prosecutor before Khan, who was chief prosecutor, opened the ICC's investigation in 2021, paving the way for last week's announcement, was also spied on and allegedly threatened. Netanyahu has taken close interest in the intelligence operations against the ICC and was described by one intelligence source as being obsessed with intercepts about the case. Overseen by his national security advisors, the efforts involved the domestic spy agency, the Shin Bet, as well as the military intelligence directorate, Amman, and cyber intelligence division, Unit 8200. And we know 8200 is involved with massive global intelligence gathering, spying, surveillance. They're hacked into the United States infrastructure. They're hacked into the Middle Eastern infrastructure. They're hacked into the China's infrastructure. They're hacked into North and South Korea's infrastructure. I don't know if they're in Russia, probably, but they are heavily involved with just total surveillance, technological backdoor spying, tracking, intelligence gathering, everything. So it's no shock that they would be involved with this as well. It says a covert operation against Bensouda, revealed on Tuesday by The Guardian, was run personally by Netanyahu's close ally Yossi Cohen, who at the time was the director of Israel's foreign intelligence agency, the Mossad. At one stage, the spy chief even enlisted the help of then President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Joseph Kabila. It says the joint investigation draws on interviews with more than 24 current and former Israeli intelligence officers and government officials, senior ICC figures, diplomats, and lawyers familiar with the ICC case and Israel's efforts to undermine it. And it goes on to say on January 16th, 2015, within weeks of the Palestinian joining the ICC, Bensouda opened a preliminary examination into what in the legalese of the court was called the situation in Palestine. The following month, 2 men had managed to obtain the prosecutor's private address turned up at her home in The Hague. So, Israeli intelligence tracked down her private residence and sent 2 men to show up at her private home. That's Bensouda, by the way. Sources familiar with the incident said that the men declined to identify themselves when they arrived, but said they wanted to hand deliver a letter to Bensouda on behalf of an unknown German woman who wanted to thank her. The envelope contained hundreds of dollars in cash and a note with an Israeli phone number. They were basically sending a message saying, we know where you live, we can track you down, you can't hide from us. That's like straight up mafia CIA tactics that they do on this. Now, keep in mind, we'll get back to that report in a second. We need to go over this to get a little bit more detail on some of the threats that was being done against Bensouda by Cohen. Israeli spy chief threatened ICC prosecutor over war crimes inquiry. This was back in 2024. Cohen's personal involvement in the operation against the ICC took place when he was the director of the Mossad. His activities were authorized as at a high level and justified on the basis of the court posed a threat of prosecutions against military personnel, according to senior officials. Israel's former spy chief allegedly threatened and attempted to blackmail the then chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court over a series of secret meetings aimed at pressuring her into abandoning a war crimes investigation. The former head of Mossad, Israel's foreign intelligence agency, Yossi Cohen, and his contacts with the then ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda took place in the years leading up to her decision to open a formal investigation into alleged war crimes and war crimes against humanity. Since it began in 2021, last week it culminated into Karim Khan, Bensouda's successor, announcing that he was seeking an arrest warrant of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu over the conduct in Gaza. Cohen's personal involvement in the operation against the ICC took place when he was director of the Mossad, and another Israeli source briefed on the operation against Bensouda said that the Mossad's objective was to compromise the prosecutor or enlist her as someone who would cooperate with Israel's demands. Think about that. Their objective either was to compromise or enlist. So get her on board or compromise her, blackmail her. Well, what did they just do, possibly, to Khan? Seems like they were going after him, too, and he wouldn't play ball, and look at what happened. A third source familiar with the operation said Cohen was acting as Netanyahu's unofficial messenger, and Cohen, who was one of Netanyahu's closest allies at the time, is emerging as a political force of his own in Israel, personally led the Mossad's involvement in an almost decade-long campaign by the country to undermine the court. 4 sources confirmed that Bensouda had briefed a small group of senior ICC officials about Cohen's attempt to sway her amid concerns about the increasingly persistent and threatening nature of his behavior. 3 of those sources were familiar with Bensouda's formal disclosures to the ICC about the matter. They said she revealed Cohen had put pressure on her on several occasions not to proceed with a criminal investigation into the ICC's Palestine case. So, how it works, if you guys don't know exactly how this works, is Israel is not a member of the ICC. So the ICC can't target them because of the membership situation, but how the ICC court system works, and this, you can thank the United States for setting this up. They're the ones who set this up. Is they establish that if something happens on a member's turf, their territory, even if that involves a country who is not a member, they now have jurisdiction to go after those people. Well, the Gaza region was joined into the ICC by the Palestinian Authority. And so they were a member. And because this stuff was happening on the territory of Gaza, even though Israel was not a member of the ICC, they are now given jurisdiction to go after them because it happened on a member's territory. You can thank, and before people say, well, that's garbage, well, you can thank the United States for building that because they're the ones that designed it. Very interesting how that all works with each other. So it's like something's coming back to bite them in the booty on that. So we get back to this situation. And so it goes on to say, 5 sources familiar with Israel's intelligence activities said it routinely spied on the phone calls made by Bensouda and her staff with the Palestinians. Blocked by Israel from accessing Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, the ICC was forced to conduct much of its research by telephone, which made it, of course, susceptible to surveillance. If Fattah Bensouda spoke to any person in the West Bank or Gaza, then that phone call would then be intercepted by Israel. The surveillance systems did not capture calls between the ICC officials and anyone outside that region. However, multiple sources said that the system required the active selection of the overseas phone numbers of the ICC officials who calls Israeli intelligence agencies decided to listen to. According to one Israeli source, a large whiteboard with an Israeli intelligence department contained the names of 60 people under surveillance, half of them of the Palestinian Authority and half in other countries, including UN officials and ICC personnel. This is insane. And this is just another one of those cases where it's like, I get it all the time. You get people who says, well, there's no possible way that they can do anything like that. They absolutely can. We've gone over the things that they've been involved with. You're telling me that they can implant explosive beepers into the hands of a terrorist organization 10 years before they decide to pull the trigger, but yet they can't go and hack and surveil people of other countries and the UN and the ICC? And then you get the other people that says, well, you know, they're just trying to defend themselves with what they're going on with this. And I'm sitting there going, it's like, doing this is not defending yourself, especially since the things that were going on in Gaza, if anybody's actually looked at the images of what was going on in Gaza, it's no shock that this is going on. And something that I've always said when it comes to this is we know scripture says that in these times there's going to be an increase of anti-Semitism. The world's going to be turning against the Jewish people. We know that's going to happen, but the Bible doesn't necessarily explain how that's going to happen. One of the aspects that's increasing on that has to do with the fact of what Israel is doing that is publicly viewed by people that is actually causing people to turn against them. Obviously, there's other elements that's increasing the anti-Semitism, but one angle of that has to do with the fact of what Israel is doing to themselves to increase it. And I'm sorry, that's not an anti-Semitic statement. It's a truthful statement. And we need to keep that in mind. So just because they're doing this doesn't mean that they're defending themselves. But even though the church, the pro-Israel church, has been trained that if anybody says anything like this, you're automatically anti-Semitic, and now you follow replacement theology and that whole gamut, which is completely false as well. So again, let's not even go down that pathway. We seek the truth no matter what. We need to be objective when it comes to it. We need to understand the times it's going on, and we need to make sure that we're not biased in what's going on with this. So this goes on to say, legitimate or otherwise, the surveillance of the ICC and the Palestinians making the case for prosecutions against Israelis provided by the Israeli government with an advantage in a secret back channel it opened with the prosecutor's office. So basically, they're surveilling the ICC and the whole situation happening there. Then they opened a back channel with the ICC's prosecutor's office, not telling them that they're intercepting this stuff, and attempting to negotiate with them with information that they're receiving ahead of time, so to try and be 2 steps ahead and basically beat them in I can't think of the word, diplomatic way. It says Israel's meeting with the ICC were highly sensitive. If made public, they had the potential to undermine the government's official position that it did not recognize the court's authority. Now, this is pretty significant because when we look at this question, I know the ICC tends to get a lot of flack saying, well, they're just pointless. They don't do anything. They're just there to type. Why would the Israeli government go to such great lengths to do what they've been doing for a decade, trying to open up back channels, keep it as quiet as possible, because they recognized the authority of the ICC. If the ICC didn't mean much, why would they go to such great lengths to do these things? That tells you that if Israel views the ICC in such a manner, then that tells us that there is some significance. That's important to recognize. Now, remember, the ICC, while they work in conjunction with the UN, it's not connected to the UN. And so the UN's pointless. We know that. But it appears that the ICC definitely does have a little bit of pull on some stuff. Whether we recognize it or know it, it appears so, because even Israel works in a way that says that they do. Interesting. According to 6 sources familiar with the meeting, they consisted of a delegation of top government lawyers and diplomats who traveled to The Hague. 2 of the sources said that the meetings were authorized by Netanyahu. The Israeli delegation was drawn from the Justice Ministry, Foreign Ministry, and the Military Advocate General's Office. The meetings took place between 2017 and 2019 and were led by the prominent Israeli lawyer and diplomat Tal Becker. Person with direct knowledge of Israel's preparation for the back channel meeting said that the officials in the Justice Ministry were furnished with intelligence that had been gleaned from Israeli surveillance intercepts. For the Israelis, the back channel meeting, while sensitive, presented a unique opportunity to directly present legal arguments challenging the prosecutor's jurisdiction over the Palestinian territories. They also sought to convince the prosecutor that despite the Israeli military's highly questionable record of investigating wrongdoings in its ranks, it had robust procedures for holding its armed forces to account. This is significant. This is important to see what's going on with this. We've gone over a bunch of that information before. The latest story that we did was there's a group of IDF soldiers, like 10 of them, who publicly gang raped a prisoner, and it's on video, caught on video. You can watch it. And Netanyahu personally wiped all their slates clean and celebrated them as heroes after they did that. And then the journalist who wrote the story, the Israeli journalist who wrote the story, put the video out there, was then gone after by the Israeli government. That's how they do investigations of their own soldiers and their own prison systems and everything like that. And so what they wanted to do was protect themselves from their false investigations that they do. And so how they had to do it was to go through ICC. And it says a core ICC principle known as complementarity prevents the prosecutor from investigating or trying individuals if they are subject of credible state investigations or criminal proceedings. So if the person being accused by the ACC, the country being accused by the ACC, can prove that they did a credible investigation and they can prove it, then the ICC will go, okay, we'll let it go and we'll back off. If they can't provide a credible level of investigation, a credible proof of investigation, then the ICC will continue to move forward. So Israel, knowing that they have a terrible and personal investigation thing for investigation program for their own wrongdoing, decided that they need to try and mask that. So Israeli surveillance operatives were asked to find out which specific incidents form part of the future ICC prosecution. Israeli intelligence needed to find out the information of through their surveillance of the ICC to get what they were looking for, what the ICC was looking to charge them for, so they can get that information and then open investigations retroactively and forge investigations with each individual case that the ICC was looking at to prove that they were innocent. So they were trying to forge fraudulent retroactive investigations by obtaining information of cases through the ICC surveillance so they can protect themselves. If materials were transferred to the ICC, again, if the ICC has no authority, why is Israel going to great lengths to do this, even though they're not a member state? If materials were transferred to the ICC, we had to understand exactly what they were to ensure that the IDF investigated them independently and sufficiently so they could claim ICC's complementarity. I can't pronounce that word. And Israel's back-channel meetings with the ICC ended in December 2019 when Bensouda, announcing the end of the preliminary examination, said she believed that there was a reasonable basis to conclude that Israel and Palestinian armed groups had both committed war crimes in the occupied territories. Again, this is going after both of them. You guys following? You guys hanging with me? What is going on here? Between late 2019 and early 2021, as a pretrial chamber considered the jurisdictional questions, the director of the Mossad, Yossi Cohen, intensified his efforts to persuade Bensouda not to proceed with the investigation. In one of the earliest encounters, Cohen surprised Bensouda when he made an unexpected appearance at an official meeting, the prosecutor was holding with then DRC President Joseph Kabila in a New York hotel. After the incident in New York, Cohen persisted in contacting the prosecutor, turning up unannounced and subjecting her to unwanted calls. Then, while initially amicable, the sources said Cohen's behavior became increasingly threatening and intimidating, even showing up to her private residence. They said he became more threatening after he began to realize the prosecutor would not be persuaded to abandon the investigation. At one stage, Cohen is said to have made comments about Bensouda's security and thinly veiled threats about consequences for her career if she proceeded. That included things like, as well, they started to do a smear hit campaign against her husband, who was involved with other political and governmental things, which had to do with foreign entities, which didn't stick. It didn't work. The campaign didn't work because they didn't find much credit on it and whatnot. So they attempted to smear her and her family, blackmail her, threaten her. They did all these types of things. In March of 2020, 3 months after Bensouda referred the Palestinian case to the pretrial chamber, an Israeli government delegation reportedly held discussions in Washington with senior U.S. officials about a joint Israeli-American struggle against the ICC. Days before the meeting in Washington, Bensouda had received authorization from the ICC's judges to pursue a separate investigation into war crimes in Afghanistan committed by the Taliban and both Afghan and U.S. military personnel. Fearing U.S. armed forces would be prosecuted, the Trump administration was engaged in its own aggressive campaign against the ICC, culminating in the summer of 2020 with the imposition of U.S. economic sanctions on Bensouda and one of her top officials. So again, this is another case where if the ICC really does not have any pull, if they really are just a tiger with no fangs, as a lot of people like to view them, why on earth is Israel and the United States going to such great lengths to try and undermine this? I mean, years-long campaigns, intelligence surveillance, smear campaigns, threats, the whole gamut, all the way around from both of these countries that aren't even members of the ICC. Why are they going to such great lengths to do this? It seems to me that there's some aspect of the ICC that we, as a whole, in the private non-club going group here, don't know is really involved with this. And so that's something that I think is rather important, that we understand that. You don't see this type of stuff happening with the UN. Maybe it's happening there, but I would think it would be more on the individual basis, not the group, because the UN is pointless at this point. They really are pointless at this point. But the ICC, this is a lot for a group that a lot of people don't think have much pull. Cohen's activities, the Mossad dude, sources said, were particularly concerning for the prosecutor and led her to fear for her personal safety. When the pretrial chamber finally confirmed that the ICC had jurisdiction in Palestine in February of 2021, some at the ICC even believed Bensouda should leave the final decision to open an investigation to her successor. On March 3rd, however, months before the end of her 9-year term, Bensouda announced a full investigation. The smear campaign didn't work. The threat campaign didn't work. She announced that they were going forward with it. And that's when Khan comes in. Concerns in Israel over Khan's intentions escalated last month when the government briefed the media that he believed that the prosecutor was contemplating arrest warrants against Netanyahu and other senior officials as such as Yoav Gallant. And we know that eventually those did come to pass. Israeli intelligence has intercepted emails, attachments, and text messages from Khan and other officials in his office. The subject of the ICC climbed the ladder of priorities for Israeli intelligence. So this started to get pushed pretty heavily when it came to Israel, Netanyahu, the intelligence group. They're saying, we really got to start moving hard and fast on this now because the warrants are coming. It was via intercepted communications that Israel established that Khan was at one stage considering entering Gaza through Egypt and wanted urgent assistance doing so without Israel's permission. And it goes on to say, branding Israel's leaders and soldiers as war criminals will pour jet fuel. This is Khan speaking. Will pour jet fuel on the fires of, not Khan. This is Netanyahu, my bad. Brandon, Israel's leaders and soldiers as war criminals will pour jet fuel on the fires of anti-Semitism. There is the key word. Even if we do something wrong and we're caught red-handed, if you claim that we're doing something wrong, you are anti-Semitic. And that's something that is definitely increased. Both real anti-Semitism has increased, and the propaganda of weaponizing the term anti-Semitism has increased. If you guys notice that, both have been increasing. Very interesting. They're not the same thing, but yet both are increasing. And neither one is good. In Washington, a group of senior U.S. Republican senators had already sent a threatening letter to Khan with a clear warning: target Israel and we will target you. I showed that letter a couple shows ago. Khan recently disclosed in an interview with CNN that some elected leaders had been very blunt with him as he prepared to issue arrest warrants. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, is what a senior leader told me, and we know that that was Lindsey Graham himself who said that. Now we're at the point here where this has been an 11-year-long campaign by Israel with so many layers. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that I saw, but I just, like I said, I just wanted to keep it as clean and unmessy as possible. I think you guys get the idea behind all of this. But this has been a long situation. It's gone through 2 prosecutors. They tried to take one out. Didn't work. She moved forward and it was approved by the ICC judges. Then she handed the torch over to Khan, who initiated everything. She did all the build-up work, and then Khan initiated the whole thing. And now all of a sudden we got weird timing when it comes to sexual allegations that kicked him out, even though he was cleared of them. Again, I don't know the situation, so I'm not advocating one way or another. But we do know that there's honeypot situations with a campaign this long. It could have easily been done that way. We understand the states that voted him out didn't even see the reports. They didn't even see it, but they got leaned on mafia style by the United States after Rubio threatened the ICC to dismantle them and threaten any country that supports what the ICC is doing. And so all of a sudden Khan's coming out. The warrants are still active, but they can easily put somebody in to start scrambling that up and disassemble them. And they can easily get a puppet in there to start literally dismantling the ICC even further, which leads me again, and I talked about it the last time, but I just want to remind you, leads me again to the possible biblical realm of this, where the Sanhedrin appointed Trump to go in and establish the Divine International Court, which would be a global court for the entire world to all be under the Noahide laws. And that's a pretty significant thing if that is what this is leading to. If they want to establish that court, they got to get rid of the ICC. And so this is very fascinating how all this is happening. It might lead to it. It might not. This could be a case where Trump is going to maybe lay the bricks and then somebody else will come in and establish it, or even the beast himself will establish it. And there's many different what ifs. We don't do what ifs. We don't do speculation. But it does seem like if they're going to set this thing up, this divine court that the Sanhedrin says they want to do, and they appointed Trump to do it, They got to get rid of the ICC. And both Israel and the United States are against it and looking to completely dismantle it, which pretty fascinating that that's the case on that. So just wanted to make sure that I put this forward. I know it's a big thing, hefty thing, a lot of information. I do think it is important though, because it could lead to major geopolitical situations as well as possibly some biblical stuff coming from it as well. Can you repeat that, Zach? Rewind. Certainly, I can repeat it as many times as you want, Proton Girl. Just use the rewind button. There you go. So, yeah, it's crazy. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts, a lot of very interesting details in regards to this. To be honest, I did not pay much attention to the ICC like at all. But then when I started to see what was going on and how deep this goes and what's all connected to it, I probably should have been paying a little bit more attention to it in the past. Certainly paying attention to it now. There might be some fireworks coming from all of this. So if I see anything significant, I'll let you guys know. But it's pretty clear, not long after Marco Rubio said that they're going to dismantle it, all of a sudden, prosecutor gets taken out who put forward the warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant. And now Israel is claiming credit for taking him out. And both the United States and Israel are not members. Fascinating. Very, very fascinating. With all that in mind, let's end with the most important part and the good stuff, the encouraging stuff. Again, all of what we just went over should be encouraging anyways. For anybody who has their faith in Jesus Christ, you should be encouraged by these things. Don't take this as doom and gloom. Don't take this as bad news. We don't want to do that, because we realize the more that this stuff continues and goes forward, the more that this darkness continues to envelop this world, the closer we are to getting out of here. Now, we don't know when. We have no idea when. We have no way of discovering or Da Vinciing some type of way to determine that, even though there's a whole group of people out there, especially right now, 'tis the season for the date setters and the high watch time people and the, I always look a little bit harder during this time, but we're not date setting, that whole crowd. Don't fall for that. Don't fall for that, because that's a good way to, again, twist scripture, take things out of context, and depress yourself. But we do know that when this stuff continues to get worse, our time is getting shorter. There is a set time that God has set to send his son to take us out of here. We don't know when, but we do know that he sits above time. Everything has already happened for him. And he's not up there panicking, altering things, trying to, well, I don't know what's going on. We got to adjust the schedule. There's not a whole bunch of angels running around, moving things around the calendar and stuff like that. No. Everything is set in time for us because it's already happened for God. And we can sit here and look at this stuff and confidently and joyfully encourage each other, because we know we're getting that much closer to going home. If you want that encouragement, if you want that hope, then you need to place your life in the hands of Jesus, who's the only one that can receive salvation. And his gospel is as simple as A, B, C. A is you admit that you're a sinner. The act of repentance, metanoia, changing of mind. If you want to truly believe in Jesus Christ as your Savior, you must first understand why you need Christ and admit that you fall short and only He can save you from your sins. It's one of those things where, again, so many people try to cut out that repentance part of it, when Scripture is very clear. Even the criminal on the cross himself repented before he believed. Said, we deserve this, but he doesn't. keep in mind, a lot of people just believe in Jesus Christ. Well, guess what? I know a whole lot of historian atheists who believe in Jesus, but it's the wrong type of belief. How do you get the right type of belief? Repentance. Admitting you fall short and admitting that Jesus Christ is the only one to save you. That simple. So you repent, which allows true belief in Jesus Christ. You believe that Jesus Christ is the one and only begotten Son of God, that he came down 100% man, 100% God, the God-man, the one and only. He lived the perfect sinless life, which means he was the only one qualified to carry the sins of the world upon his shoulders to the cross, to take my place, your place upon that cross. He willingly did it. Where he was crucified and he died. But because there's power in the blood of Jesus Christ, he defeated death and rose again on the third day. For all who believe in him shall not perish, but live forever in his presence and in his glory. He did it. He defeated death. He was the perfect, willing sacrifice. He even says so on the cross to tell us that it is finished. And it is so he receives the glory. Pretty good gift. You receive life. He receives glory. Pretty good. I'd say so. And C, as you call upon the Lord, when you receive salvation, you are indwelt with the Holy Spirit and receive the supernatural gift of prayer that allows us direct access to our Heavenly Father of any moment of any day. We can come to him and say, God, thank you for sending your Son, Jesus Christ, to be the perfect sacrifice so that I may live. You love me so much that you sent your Son to save me. Thank you. Thank you for the ultimate gift. And God, we ask as we navigate these times right now, there is so many moving pieces happening right now. And it appears, from our perspective, our little finite brains, that things appear to be all escalating towards a peak at the exact same time. And we just ask, Lord, please guide us as we try and navigate these things in order to be better watchmen as you have commanded us to be. And we ask, Lord, give us the opportunities to use this information to share the gospel with those who need Jesus. We ask, Lord Jesus, that you please come soon, Maranatha. In your holy name that we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. Let's see. Do we have any questions? Just two. Just two. Let's see. What do we got here? Patrick Starr, question. Is there any way that we can suspect when an earthquake is provoked by man-made technology? If there is, I don't know. So you're not asking like if there's man-made technology to do earthquakes. We know that they do have that stuff available. Your question is there a way to determine if it's a natural earthquake or if it's one done by man? I don't know. If there is, I don't have any idea what it would be. It's just one of those things where it's just when an earthquake happens, we just kind of gotta just take it as such. My perspective, though, this is my perspective. I think there's way too much emphasis put on man-made stuff, and it's taking away the power that God is making things happen as well. I still very much believe that God is making these things happen in places, whether to send messages, which we know God still sends messages. If you do something wrong, there's a chance that he'll send a quick little judgment your way, or he's prepping things for the future when things go haywire. We know that there are man-made things when it comes to weather events. I just think that there's way too much. There's some people, every single storm, every single tornado, every single wildfire, every single earthquake, every single volcano, is man-made. They're doing it all, and I'm sitting there going, I think that's a very ridiculous, sensational mindset to have when it comes to this. Not only is that just not true, but now you're saying man has way more power and all this stuff, and you're taking the sovereignty away from God at the same time. I think there's a mix of both, but I think it leans more in the direction of God being involved as opposed to man, even though both are involved. How can we tell? I don't know. That's my perspective. That's just a long way of getting around of saying I don't know. Let's see. Last question. Deboni Ray question. Have you heard anything about China's Daewoo 3 being used in Iran? No idea. I don't even know what Daewoo 3 is, so I'd need to look that up. So, no idea. I always hold the right to say I don't know. And I'm invoking that right now. I have no idea. Sorry, I can't provide more. I'll try and see if I can take a peek at what that is, and and if you ask again, I'll see if I can let you know. Alrighty, guys, that is it for tonight. Thank you guys for joining me. Appreciate it. Usual spiel, if you guys can. Oh, nope, that's Law and Order. That's the wrong button. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe. My bad. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can do me a solid and like, share, subscribe, certainly appreciate it. Again, our goal is to try and get out there and get the gospel and the truth and the warning out to as many people as we can while we still have time. We don't know how long we have, but we still need to make sure that we're on fire and fueling that. Please like, share, subscribe. To help do so. Also follow along on Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back up live streaming on Rumble, Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format. So make sure you guys follow along there. The best place, there we go. The best place to stay up to date, of course, is the WretchedWatchmen.com website. The one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything happening in the Wretched Watchmen world of things. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams. You'll find the announcement page, the free book to download, and all that other shenanigans on the website. Go bookmark it so you're always in the haps in the know. And then last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel, what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and Give, Send, Go. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, anything like that. We don't do paywalls, subscriptions. We don't sell things. We don't have memberships. We don't do any of that type of stuff. It's entirely free. The reason why we can do it for free, the reason why we're able to do this consistently is because of your guys' donations. So if you guys want to help keep this going, you guys want to contribute to this to help get the warning and the gospel out, those links are below. Thank you for those who do support and donate and keep this going. I appreciate you guys very much so. So thank you for that. All right, that's it. Thank you for joining me. Tomorrow is Sunday, so make sure you guys get your wretched, misfit, heathenic booties to church, whether online, in person, doesn't matter as long as it's a Bible believing Christ following church. And then I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Maranatha. That's the wrong button. Where? There you go.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.